schoolboys, when they were out rabbiting, the dog went down a small cleft in the rocks, and there they discovered a group of these miniature coffins with little figures. Originally there were 17 of them. Now, and they were supposedly, according to contemporary accounts, they were supposedly laid out in a layer of 8, and another layer of 8, and one on top. The boys, as all boys do, played with them, and it would appear that some of them were damaged and in fact destroyed. So all we have now, and all we have on display, are 8 left. The museum were donated them, or given them anyway, in 1901. They've been on display almost constantly. They are one of our treasures, they're one of our favourite objects, and vast numbers of people, both Edinburgh and folk from further afield, come in to see them. It's just that air of mystery. The notion of an unsolved mystery that people love. One of the Scotsman's theories was that they were something to do with witchcraft, because of course Arthur's Seat is an amazingly evocative place, and there were all sorts of stories about witchcraft and such like round about it. However, it doesn't quite tie in with what we normally think of as witchcraft practices. In certain witchcraft practices, figures are used to try to inflict harm on somebody. But normally what happens is the figures are destroyed or damaged in some way. Here, they've all been beautifully looked after. They've been very carefully clothed and carefully buried. They've been given a great deal of respect. So that hardly ties in with witchcraft. Other theories tie them in with certain lower German theories that they were surrogate burials for people who died abroad. But again, there's absolutely no evidence for this sort of thing in Scotland. Another theory is that they represent people or sailors who died at sea. Again, this isn't something that we really know much about in Scotland. There is even a theory that they were partly tied up with the idea of a mandrake, i.e. a figure that brought, that could help cure illnesses, and that there was in some way a store of these little figures that would be sold, that the merchant had left. And again, there's no evidence for this sort of thing happening in Scotland. So we're left with considerable doubt as to what they were for. And I think the most recent theory, which is now nearly 20 years old, admittedly, is probably the most plausible. And here I have to confess that we have to say a great thank you to an ex-colleague and a previous curator of this museum, Dr. Alan Simpson, and his colleague Sam Menefee, who reviewed all the evidence, did exactly what curators do. They look at the objects, they pull all the evidence together, and then they try and come up with a theory that fits the evidence. They looked at the coffins themselves, the little figures, came up with some interesting information that we hadn't really picked up before, i.e. the coffins are all made out of a single piece of wood, possibly by a shoemaker, using a carved shoemaker's knife. The figures are all clothed in cotton clothes using cotton thread. Now that dates them. The type of thread can be dated roughly to about 1830. Once you've got that date set, that they have to be buried not long before they were discovered, you then start to think, well, what on earth, what happened in Edinburgh that would occasion the burial of 17 little coffins with 17 little figures? And of course the thing that comes up immediately is the scandal of Burke and Hare.